Hello, I'm Peter Anderson and welcome to the Redline. Today, it's a little bit of history. It's possibly the last of its breed. It's the Lamborghini Aventador S V12 mid-mounted. Remember that, because that's very important, because there's probably only two of those left in the world that we really know about. It's this and the Pagani. And even though this is a stupidly expensive car, the Pagani is even more expensive. Let's have a look, shall we? 20-inch wheels. Now, this is all-wheel drive, so it's very important that you've got grip at both ends. These are 255s. The back, they're like steamrollers. 355 tyres. They're like that wide. Carbon ceramic brakes. Massive Lamborghini. These look amazing. We'll show you those close up. The only Lamborghini left with these doors. How cool is that? These look great, and what's good, they are practical, promise you, because when you're really hemmed in, you can get out. Not like those silly Tesla doors. This looks like you could scoop up small children, and you can, but this is also where all the cooling air goes in. There's massive fans behind these and huge radiators both sides. And the air intake here, if you're standing next to this and I rev it, you can actually hear the air go, so much is going in there. It's really cool. This is the business end of this car. This is a Lamborghini V12, 6.5 litres, 544 kilowatts, or about 730 brake horsepower, 740 metric horsepower. It's an absolute ton of power, that's quite a lot for a naturally aspirated engine. That's the other thing I want you to remember, naturally aspirated, because that's something that we're not doing much of anymore, and Lamborghini is the last kind of supercar maker to do just naturally aspirated engines. The Huracan has a V10. This just looks like the back of the car, but it's actually a wing. When you get over a certain speed, it comes up and gives you real downforce. It's not just for looks. This glass cover is really cool. You can spec a bunch of different covers. You can have carbon, but this lets you see the engine, the pushrod suspension, and you can see everything. It looks amazing, and there's a few options here. You've got carbon fiber. There's a lot going on. So this is a Lamborghini. This is still a classic Lamborghini V12. 60 degrees, so that means the V's are angled 60 degrees, some are 90 degrees. That sits right up hard against behind where you sit, so they're trying to get all the weight as far towards the middle of the car as possible. That's what makes it a mid-engine car. So a Porsche 911, the engine's out there. In a V12 Lamborghini, it's in here. So even the V12 Ferraris, they're front engine. Still mid-engine because all the weight is behind the rear axle, but this is actually a mid-engine car in the classic sense. There's not many of those left. This is a carbon fibre strut. This helps stiffen the car, and again there's another one here that does the same thing. Underneath here we've got pushrod suspension. That's full-on race car stuff. The SV didn't have this. This is new for this car. I hope I'm right about that. It's new for this car, and while it doesn't do any favours at all for the ride, it makes it really, really, really grippy, and the handling really benefits from having these pushrod suspensions. They are adjustable too. I won't be doing that, I'll get myself into a lot of trouble, but under here is the Lamborghini single clutch gearbox. I reckon they thought long and hard about whether or not to hang on to that, but it really gives this a race car raw feel, and you'll see that when we're out driving it. It's like the original BMW M5 that had a single clutch gearbox. The M3 had one as well. The first M3 to have a 6-cylinder with that semi-automatic. And look, twin clutch is better if you like to drive smoothly. This doesn't help smooth driving, but it does help fast driving, and it makes it feel like that race car thing. Because a lot of race cars don't have twin clutch gearboxes. They have something like this. The V12, 540 kilowatts, 730 brake horsepower, 740 metric horsepower. That is a lot of power, and it uses a lot of fuel. It's also got 690 Newton meters of torque. That's the kind of thing you get out of a diesel, but the torque in this car is what really makes things happen. When you put your foot down, it absolutely hammers. You don't have to be at the top of the rev range, although it's worth it for the sound. You don't have to be at the top of the rev range to make things happen, and it does make the car a little bit easier to drive, because V12s where all the power and all the torque is up the top, and if it hasn't got much torque, it makes it a bit harder to drive. But with all that torque, it means you've got a lot of twist. It's not a heavy car. It's only just over 1.5 tons, just around 3,000 pounds, but having that torque just makes it a little bit easier to drive, and when you're really on it, you really feel it. It's great, and it makes the rear end a little bit taily, even though it is all-wheel drive. Of course, some of the power goes to the front, but most of the power is down here at the back, which is the only place power should come from, in my opinion. Now, we talked about these tyres. These are Pirelli P0s, and these are made for this car. So Pirelli, as you probably know, does Formula One's tyres and a lot of racing tyres for a lot of different things. These are amazing. They've got so much grip. This thing absolutely flies, and tyres are one of the most important things on a sports car like this. Absolutely brilliant. The other thing about the rear wheels, they actually have steering. So the Aventador S has 4-wheel steer. What that means is that when you're going slow, they turn in the opposite direction to the front so that you get a really tight turning circle. That's important because in the city, these cars are hard to maneuver because you can't see a lot. So you really want to get the feeling that you can get around corners and turn around and do what you need to do. Very, very cool. And when you're going fast, they turn the same direction. It's only a little bit, but it just helps the car flow a bit better through the corners and gives it a bit more kind of predictability, I guess, but it really makes the car feel planted. Couple that with all the downforce that you get from these side skirts, the rear splitter, the front splitter, it's pretty amazing. We're very lucky on this car too, it's an option. We can flick a switch and lift the front, so if we're going over speed bumps or whatever, we don't scrape the bottom. It still scrapes though. This is one very low car. So that is a very quick tour of the outside. Let's go inside. Those doors never get old. I tell you what, kids love them. So the interior of this, not a lot's happened in between the old version of the Aventador and this one, but what's really cool about the Aventador is that since Audi bought Lamborghini, Lamborghini's been able to get on with the business of making a sports car. So all of this stuff here is straight out of Audi. You know what that means? It works. The stereo, it works. You pair your phone, it all works. All the switchgear, all that stuff, that's all really expensive stuff to make. And if Lamborghini doesn't have to worry about it, that means they're spending more time on getting things like 4-wheel steering right and getting all that right. So if anyone goes, you've got Audi stuff in it, it doesn't matter. And in fact, it's a good thing. Here you've got these beautiful aluminium paddles. When you pull that, that's when all the action happens with the gearbox. Now in this car, it's very unusual. Everything has gone to dual clutch gearbox. This is a single clutch gearbox, and that really makes a big difference when you're driving this car. And I reckon it makes people either love this car more or hate it more. It's quite polarizing. The steering wheel's tiny. These pedals are really close together, and they're actually across in the middle of the car. So in most cars, the accelerator pedal's right over here against the firewall or the side wall, but this one, it's practically in the middle, so it forces you to left foot brake. And again, that's an interesting thing and could make or break what people want from this car. This car is full of options. Everything yellow you see, that's an option. And you can have any colour you like. It's a Lamborghini, including you can change the colour of the seatbelts. This is a suede and leather steering wheel. You've got heaps of the seats are electric. I know, and a Lamborghini electric seats, that's pretty amazing. You've got Alcantara all through the cabin. That's that really lovely suede type material, and it's all over the car. This car is really beautifully finished. It's really, really nice. Because sometimes you get into a supercar and you think, oh, it's a bit, it just feels like it hasn't been put together that well. This car is beautifully put together, and I think again, that's part of the Audi influence. Dashboard is fully digital. That's very cool, and that's new on this car. You've got everything you need. You can use this car every day. It's comfortable, it's not too difficult to get in and out of, and I really like it. So like most cars, you've got driving modes, but of course in a sports car, they do very different things. This is your drive selector here. So you just flick through them like this and it changes the way the car works. So in Strata, everything is turned down. The throttle is a bit softer, so it's a bit easier to drive more smoothly. You've got a slower gear change, which actually isn't that great, so I wouldn't recommend it. And then you've got Corsa. Corsa is the top one, and in between that, you've got Sport. Now, Lamborghini do something a little bit different. You expect that as you go up, the looser the car gets, but Sport is where you're actually going to have the most fun, particularly on the road, because the car's a little bit more taily and a bit more lighter. But in Corsa, it's all about getting the car straight and going. So you'll be in a corner and you'll floor the throttle, and the stability and traction controls will say, no, wait till you're straight, and then it will, boom, you'll be off. So you'll probably go faster around a track in Corsa, but you won't be having as much fun. So on the street, I leave it in sport because it makes a fantastic racket. There's so much noise that comes out of the exhaust in sport. It makes the car a little bit more lively. It's never going to get away from you. If you want a car to get away from you, you turn off the traction control. Don't do that. Unless you're superbly talented on a track, turning off ESC is a really good way to end up on YouTube for all the wrong reasons. The other thing I like about this is this. You flip up the little red cover and you press start and she fires up. And it doesn't matter what mode you're in, it makes a great noise. But Lamborghini, they haven't forgotten the little stuff. They haven't forgotten the practicality. You might be a high-flying superstar, but you've still got to get your stuff from A to B. So there's a boot. You can actually get things in a Lamborghini. People will always tell you, oh, supercars, they're so impractical. And they are. This is 185 litres though, which means you can get stuff in it. You can get a little bag, another little bag, and no, I won't get in. But you won't be getting your golf clubs in here. Although I have it on very good authority, you can get one of those backpack golf things into the passenger seat, but you'll be golfing alone. So driving this car, it's weird, right? So I've driven a few supercars, Ferraris, the Lamborghini Huracan, and this feels like I imagine supercars used to. I mean, this is an old car, it's been around a long time now, and with this single clutch gearbox, it feels more like a race car, whereas the Ferraris and the Huracan, the other Lambo, it's got a dual clutch. So when you pull that paddle, it's bang, straight through. You don't even feel it. Whereas this, when you're really motoring, it feels like you're being shot every time you pull a gear. It's so hard and it's so raw. And that's what this car, that's what it comes down to. It's raw. It's all very emotional. There's very little compromise in this car. When you're just bumping around town, it's actually a very frustrating car to drive in town. It's bumpy and it's jerky because of the gearbox. In strata mode, don't drive this car in strata mode. Even though the suspension is a bit more supple, it's terrible because the gear shift is, you kangaroo hop like a learner. And that's pretty embarrassing in a very expensive car. But as you build speed, the ride improves, the gear shift gets better, the engine absolutely sings over 4,000 revs, and you've got 4,000 more to go, and you pull that gear and it's still up there at the Redline, and it's a glorious thing. And that's what leads me to believe that this really isn't much of a road car as much as it is a race car. And I think a lot of people are looking for that. I think, you know, a lot of 911 GT3 drivers, that's what they're looking for. And a lot of Ferrari drivers are looking for that and probably don't get it unless they get a special edition like a 458 Speciale or an F12 TDF. What I most love about this car, and there are lots of things to love about it, is that this is a mid-engine V12 supercar. This is a proper supercar. This is the supercar that my generation, they pinned it up on the wall. It was just, and it's still got that vibe. It's still got the drama of the looks of the Countach. It's still got the drama of the looks of the Diablo. This turns more heads than a Ferrari, it honestly does. When you're out driving, people run after it and take photos of it. You know, kids look up and go, that's a Lambo. And as a Lamborghini owner, the most fun you will have is driving this around where there are people, pulling it into neutral and just revving it and enjoying yourself. It really is that kind of car. It puts a smile on everyone's face. It won't put a smile on the face of a greenie, but that's cars, right? But everybody loves it. It's got that beautiful sound and noise, and passengers love it because of the brutality of it. It really is quite brutal. Whereas Ferraris are so refined now, and you know, the Audi R8 is refined, and all those cars are so smooth and lovely, massively fast, and you know, there's a good, long, possibly violent argument to be had about which is the better car, and that's not what we're here to do. We're here just to love supercars. But it really is. The Aventador wasn't quite what I was expecting. It's much rawer, much bloodier, much more gladiatorial than I was expecting. And I think it's brilliant they're still making cars like that, because, you know, supercar makers, like any car maker, they've got to broaden their audience. They've got to make sure people want to buy the car. And it's almost like Lambo's going, no, bugger it. You want a Lambo. If you want to buy this car, you want a Lambo, and this is what we think a Lambo is. So Forza Lamborghini, Forza Italia.